the families, though, as I've been talking about. We've been talking about couples. The first couple, now I'm going to continue this on. I hope you've been enjoying this. The Lord laid it on my heart here to do a little series of these. The first couple I talked about was Adam and Eve. And what did we call that couple? They were the disobedient couple, the disobedient couple. Then the next one I talked about was Nabal and Abigail. And I labeled them what? The divided couple, the divided couple. How Abigail's a type of the church, David a type of Christ, Nabal a type of the unbeliever. Okay, the divided couple. Then last week, what did I teach on? Anybody remember? The worldly couple. And who represented the worldly couple in the Bible? Lot and his wife. Lot and his wife, the worldly couple. How they just wouldn't let go of the world. Now today, I'm going to talk about the godly couple, the righteous planners, the righteous planners. And then I've got a couple more after that. When we're done with this one, next week we'll get into the idolatrous couple, the idolatrous couple. There's a lot on that one. But this one here is going to be out of 2 Kings, and this is the Shunammite and her husband, the righteous planners, or the godly couple. 2 Kings chapter 4. 2 Kings chapter 4. Now, last week it focused mainly on the husband, Lot. There wasn't much mention with his wife, but I decided to throw that one in there because it did represent the worldly couple. Now, this one focuses more on the wife than it does on the husband. In fact, so much so that it doesn't even give us the husband's name. So, and that's rather odd in the Bible. It doesn't give us the name of the wife either. It just calls her the Shunammite. So we've got the Shunammite and her husband. No names given to this couple. They're the godly couple, the righteous planners. Now you're going to see some things, ladies. This is a good one for you because you're going to see some things about how a godly woman or a woman that wants to be godly should live. And this woman is the only woman in the Bible to be called great. She was great, a great woman. You would think that would be Mary, the mother of Jesus, but no. When the angel said to her, "Blessed art thou among women," okay, said, you're blessed among women. Jael, also, the one that took the nail and killed Sisera, killed Sisera with the nail. The Lord said she was blessed above women too. But there's only one woman in the Bible that gets the distinction of being a great woman, and it's the Shunammite. And there are certain things that she did to deserve this. The one thing is, and ladies, this is the way it should be with you. You should fight for what's right. You should fight to be godly. And thirdly, you should fight for your family and for the needs of your family. And that's the one thing. She interceded for the needs of her family. And you're going to see this. This isn't the only chapter of the Bible she's mentioned in. And I'll show that to you because a lot of times we only read this and think this is all that's mentioned of her. But there's another little blip from a couple chapters later after this that she's mentioned again. So let's look in 2 Kings chapter 4 in verse number 1. Or verse number 8. Let's go to 8. 2 Kings 4, verse 8. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. Now you're going to see right away, she's a great woman. Now, not that she was great with possessions, but she obviously was great in the eyes of the community. She has had this distinction. There's a woman in the Bible who is called a virtuous woman. And ladies, who was that? Who in the Bible has the distinction of being a virtuous woman? Ruth, the distinction. Okay. She was, for all the community, for all the people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. So that everyone knew this woman had virtue. She was virtuous. Okay. So here's a great woman. She constrained him to eat bread. Now, she took care of Elisha. Now, the reason she took care of Elisha is because she had spiritual perception. Now, what did she see in Elisha? She was married, of course, so she wasn't looking for a husband. It wasn't like she was just in the market to take care of strangers. but there was something about Elisha that she knew about him. She had perception. We're going to see. It says she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. So Elisha the prophet had a place where he could go, where he could get a meal in his travels, and how important he was to the nation of Israel because he was a prophet. It says in verse 9, and she said unto her husband, behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. So ladies, what did she have? She had spiritual perception. She saw this man and she said, there's something distinct about this man, distinctive about this man. This man is a holy man. And with that, she said to her husband, we need to take care of his needs. Okay? So we think about this. How can we take care of the things that are holy? Well, one, making sure our family's in church. Now, this morning, last night, I had the pleasure of having my grandkids over. Yesterday, we had a little Thanksgiving dinner for just the family. But then afterwards, my wife said, they're all sleeping overnight. And I'm like, was this planned? And last night, we had all three grandkids and they slept over and we got up this morning. And I have to tell you, it's easy to get ready for church when you get ready by yourself, is it not? But when you have three kids that are in the house, you say, well, not only do I have to get myself ready, my wife has to get herself ready, and now you got three kids that you have to get ready. Now, of course, we've had children, so we're used to the two that we had, getting them ready to go to church. So you got to understand, ladies, who does it fall on to get everybody ready? Does your husband get up, get everybody ready, say, honey, I took care of it all. I fed them, I bathed them. They're clothed. Look, his hair is parted on the right side. Her hair is perfectly curled. I did it all. It's good. And we laugh, right? Because who does it fall on? For the most part. Now, there are some men that do that. You got one of those husbands, you got to give him a big kiss. And you ought to say, thank you. You let me sleep in a little bit. You took care of everything this morning. You know how difficult it is to get the family ready for church. Now, let's consider this woman. Do you think she would have gotten her family ready for worship? Why? Why? We say yes. Well, she was a great woman. Why do you think she would have? It doesn't say that she did. But why do we think that this woman would have gotten her church or her family ready for church and had them on time for the service? Why do you think she would have done that? Because she took care of the man of God. She had spiritual perception. She understood that if I take care of the things that are holy, and if I bring these holy things in my house and I take care of him, she went to her husband. The idea was, if I do all this, we're going to get blessed. Now, that falls in line with Proverbs 31. Now, every woman in here who's been saved for any amount of time should be able to say, I understand Proverbs 31. It's a chapter that I've read. It's a chapter that I know. And it's a chapter that I model myself after. I want to be like that woman in Proverbs 31. Well, if there's any woman in the Bible who was like Proverbs 31, it's this woman right here. She had spiritual perception. She was benevolent. She was willing to take of her own to take care of the holy man of God. And she talks her husband into doing something that's really important that will be known from generations to follow. Because churches have a certain thing where they keep people. Missionaries come in, evangelists come in, people that might need a place to stay, and the church has a place called a what? A prophet's chamber. A prophet's chamber. And that's exactly where the idea of a prophet's chamber came from. It comes from what's to follow in this chapter. She says we need to build a place that this man can come and refresh himself. And he can be separate from us. We need to put a table there. We need to put a candlestick there. And we need to equip it with the things he needs in order to do his job. The idea of a prophet's chamber came from the idea of a woman's thought. I'm going to take care of him. We need to build. And let's do this. so that he's comfortable, so that he can minister. Again, ladies, in the world we live, we can look at material things and we could say, well, we need to take care of the material things and we need the material things. Yes, that's all well and good. And our family needs to be fed. Our family needs to be clothed. We need to make sure that that's all taken care of. But what's beyond that? It's the responsibility of the woman, as much as it is the man, to make sure that her household are doing the things of the Lord and abiding in holy things. Okay? Now, with that said, this woman was called great because she did exactly what I just mentioned. Okay, let's continue on. All right, so it says in verse 9, and she said unto her husband, behold, now I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed. Why a bed? She said there's necessities. He needs to have a bed. Why? Because he needs the rest. He needs to get his rest so he can be fresh, so he can get out there and have the strength he needs to do to minister. We need a bed. Okay? Let us set for him there a bed and a table. Why table? The essentials, right? A bed and a table, because he needs to be able to sit at the table and eat, read, study, pray, do whatever he needs to do. He needs a table. Okay? So the essentials. And a stool, of course, a place to sit, and a candlestick. He's going to need a light. And it shall be when he cometh to us that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and he turned to the chamber and lay there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, say now unto her, behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? He said, what do you want in return? Now, ladies, if you do something for the Lord, is there an expectation that you want something in return? Come on, be honest. In the back of our head, and oftentimes when we do something for the Lord, do we expect something in return? Sometimes we do. You know, a preacher once said, how many things do we actually do just simply because we love God and we expect nothing in return? In this case, she did all this. She expected nothing. I want nothing in return. This is what I'm going to do because he's a holy man of God, and this is my way of serving the Lord. I'm going to do this, and I want nothing in return. Okay? And I praise God because this is an unselfish act. And women that do this and people that do this and they give to God and they expect nothing in return, it's blessed and it's very unselfish. And that's an attitude that's very difficult because oftentimes in the back of our head, we take an angle and we say, well, if I do this, I know God then will bless me. That's good. It's okay to do that. God understands us. But in this case, what did she say? What is to be done for thee? Wouldst thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And basically what she was saying was, I'm content. I'm happy. I don't need anything. You don't need to speak to the king for me. I am very happy in my life. I don't need anything. And he said, what then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, verily she hath no child, and her husband is old. Now we're getting there. Could she have said that to him? Could she have said, I have no child? I've always wanted to hold a baby. I've always wanted to have my own child. I prayed. I've asked God for a child. Could she have said that? But she held that within herself. Even though she wanted that, she didn't ask for that. Gehazi finds out. He says, she doesn't have a child. Her husband's old. That would be something. And he called her, and he said, call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door. And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. An honest woman. He said, No, 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 no. Don't you? No, man of God. I trust you and everything, but don't you be lying to me about this. Don't get my hopes up. And the woman conceived and bare a son at the season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, so the child grows up here a little bit, probably, I would think, maybe 12, 13 years old. And he said unto his father, my head, my head. And he said to the lad, carry him to his mother. So something was happening here. It looks like he had heat stroke, or he had some kind of sunstroke being out there in the heat. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died. It's a very sad ending, isn't it? But is it over with? Remember, who did she do this for? She did it out of her free will. I want to help the man of God. Does God remember? God remembers. Now watch, one of the greatest stories in the scripture. Then he died, and she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God. She didn't even put him on his own bed. She took him over to the chamber, put him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him and went out. And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God and come again. And he said, Wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It shall be well. Then she sat on an ass and said to her servant, Drive and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. Like, get to him now. And don't slow down unless I tell you. Now, here's the thing. Did she tell her husband that he was dead? She didn't. She didn't whisper even a hint. Said, all is well. I'm going to the prophet. Drive, and drive fast. Verse 25. So she went and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, It is well. And when she came to the man of God, to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her, and the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Then she said, Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not again, and lay my staff upon the face of the child. Now, was she content with that answer? What did she want? He said to Gehazi, he said, Hey, you're my servant, take my staff, go with her, and when you go there, put the staff over the child's mouth. I don't think so. Nope. You promised me a son, and I'm holding you to that promise. You're coming with me. My child is dead. You're coming with me. I want you to come. Now, that's called tenacity, and this woman had it. She looked well to the ways of her household, didn't she? She said, I want you to come, not your servant. I don't want second best. You come. And she convinces him to come. It says in verse number 30, and the mother of the child said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them and laid the staff upon the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him and told him, saying, The child is not awaked. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, laid upon his bed. And he went in therefore, shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up, and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes. And he stretched his hands upon his hands, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm. Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him, and the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. Now, there's something with that sneeze that's really been over the years. I looked at that and I've tried to study that out. There's something that sneezing does. Um, and a lot of people say after you sneeze, what? What's that? What do they say? Someone loves you? Okay. What else? Go ahead. God bless you. My dad always used to say, when he sneezed, I'd say, God bless you. He'd say, don't say that. He'd be like, why? Anybody know why? Because the old the old fable, the old myth was when you sneeze, you release demons. And when you sneeze, they come out of you and person says, God bless you, because you're releasing evil spirits. And my dad would say, that's the history behind it. Well, I don't know that. I didn't look it up, but I don't know how Gesundheit uh, plays in there. But there's something about sneezing. And something about sneezing too? It's such a force with the way you sneeze that you cannot do what? You cannot keep your eyes open. You can't. Who knew that? Your eyes automatically shut because there's so much force behind a sneeze. Now, of course, the sneezing and the history behind it all. In this case, he sneezed 7 times. So something was happening to his system. And then he opened his eyes. Okay. So a very strange situation here. But Elisha raises him from the dead. It says in verse 36, and he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite. So he called her. And when she was come in unto him, he said, take up thy son. Then she went in and fell at his feet and bowed herself to the ground and took up her son and went out. Now, that is what the Bible says is a great woman. She looked well to the ways of her household. Now, let's consider her and let's go over to Proverbs chapter 31, and then we'll look at what else happens to her, because it's not the end. It's not the end. There's something else that happens to her. All right, let's go to Proverbs 31. Proverbs 31, and let's look in verse number 10. Proverbs 31, verse 10. It says, who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. Now, do you think that Shunammite's husband, that his heart completely trusted her? When she went out and said, give me your servant, we're going to go see the man of God. And he said, is it all well? Did she trust him? Or did he trust her? Absolutely. The heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeketh wool and flax, and worketh willingly with her hands. She is like the merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. She riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. Your mother ever get up in the middle of the night for you? Mom! I have to say this, and I've watched this firsthand with many women, my daughters having children, and my wife and others. Once a woman has a baby, they never sleep. They never sleep. And you say, well, they do sleep. Yes, but they always sleep with one eye open or one ear open. Always, always. It's never that deep sleep like it was before. And I could say even to this day, though our children have left the house, it's my wife and I, my wife still does not sleep the way she once slept before she had children, because those children just vicariously somehow live in you. They live in you, and you never, ever let them go. And if they needed, you'd rise up during the night. And Beth and I were talking this morning, her daughters, one lives in Europe and the other one in Norfolk. And Beth, if they called you at 1 o'clock in the morning and said, I need you, what would you do? Yeah, you'd get on the first plane you could and get down there as quickly as you could, because They're part of you. And that's the way it is. You never ever leave them, and they never leave you, even though if they do leave, they're just part of you. They do change you. But riseth also while it is yet night, giveth meat to her household. Now, if your husband called you during the middle of the night and said, I'm hungry, can I have a sandwich? And ladies just kind of smile because you don't know what you'd do. Say, the old saying, you have two legs, right? Would you get up and get your household? He's part of your household. Would you get him a sandwich? Boy, it got real quiet all of a sudden. All right, a portion to her maidens. She considereth a field. I like this one here because how many would trust their wife to buy them a house? You just say, I don't need to see it. Just pick it and go with it. I trust you. And last time I did this, we laughed afterwards because that's what Brittany did. Brittany saw the house and said, that's the one right there. Where's Justin? He's working. That's the one. That's the one. And the real estate agent said, Britt, you got to move on this quickly. What do you want to do? This house is going to go. And it would have gone really quickly. So she called Justin. She says, I found a house. We're over at the house. It's beautiful. The real estate agent said it's a good deal. What do you think? He said, well, I didn't see it. He said, if you like it that much and you think it's a good deal, go for it. So she went for it. And, the house that they live in, he loves the house. So it's like, would you trust your wife to do that? Considereth a field and buyeth it with the fruit of her hands. She planteth a vineyard. Definitely not lazy. She's out there planting and taking care of the house. She girdeth her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. She perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth not out by night. And when we're comparing this person here, this woman, we can compare this woman to the Shunammite that took care of the man of God. She definitely took care of the things of her house. And that Shunammite is an interesting. The women that were Shunammite in the Bible were great women, and they were sought after women. It was Solomon who had a Shunammite, and that Shunammite actually it was David. They looked for a woman to give David heat, and they called upon this Shunammite. She was picked to give David heat. Now he never laid with her. He never knew her, the Bible says, but she slept with him to give the king heat because he could get no heat. So after this, all the young men in the kingdom had their eyes on her. And in fact, this creates a problem because there was one that went after her. I believe it was Ishbosheth. Or was it Ishbosheth? I think he declared himself to be king along Adonijah, not Ishbosheth, Adonijah. Adonijah said, I will be king. And then Solomon, at the time, Bathsheba went to David and said, my son Solomon, he's the one that was promised to be king. Lo, does the king know that Adonijah reigns? And the king said, bring the priest and let's anoint Solomon to be king. And all the people came, and David said, Solomon shall be king. And all the people said, God save King Solomon. And Adonijah feared. And Solomon said, if you show yourself worthy, you will not die. Then what did he do? He went to Bathsheba and he said, the kingdom really was mine. But God gave it to Solomon. And this is one thing I asked. What did he ask? He said, that woman, that Shunammite woman, that beautiful woman, the one that was called to lay with David to give him heat, let me have her to wife. Ask King Solomon if I can have her to wife. And what happened? Bathsheba went and said, grant me one favor, and I may not. And he said, I will not deny thee, O my mother. And she said, give the Shunammite to Abishai. And then what did Solomon do? Solomon says, wherefore askest thou this woman for Abishai? Askest thou the kingdom also? She was prized as a Shunammite woman. Something about these women from Shunem. They were great women, beautiful women. And he said, he has spoken this for his life. And he sent an executioner, and he had Adonijah killed because of this request. Obviously, and this is the one, the Shunammite woman, that I believe Song of Solomon is written about, that he wrote. You know, Solomon had 1,000 wives. And you say, well, did he love any of them? I mean, a man can have a concubine and can have many wives, but truly, does he love them? But it seems like Solomon's affection was on this woman. And the irony of it is, he never did get her, did he? And it seemed like Solomon had 1,000 wives. He had 300 concubines, 700 wives, 300 concubines, or whatever it was. That equal 1,000, but he never really got the one that he wanted. And it was this woman. And we find the woman from Kings being from Shunem, the same as that Shunammite. Okay? Is there any connection between them? Anything? Not sure. But we get the Proverbs, and we find Proverbs 31 written, and the woman in 2 Kings there mirrors this woman to the letter almost. She perceiveth, verse 18, she perceiveth that her merchandise is good, her candle goeth not out by night. She layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. She stretcheth out her hand to the poor. Yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. Did she do that? Yes. For Elisha, she is not afraid of the snow for her household. For all her household are clothed with scarlet. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. She maketh fine linen and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Strength and honor are her clothing, and she shall rejoice in time to come. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. So she's definitely not lazy, and that woman wasn't lazy at all. She looked well to the ways of her household. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain. But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Amen. I thank you, ladies in here that are faithful to God. You fear God and you serve God, and you're going to be praised. And your family will praise you for your holiness and for your stand for the Lord. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. And again, so many sermons and so many books have been written and preached about Proverbs chapter 31. Now, we can apply that chapter definitely to that Shunammite woman, the great woman there in 2 Kings. Now, it's not the end of the story, because there's something that happens with this woman again. Well, after her son is raised from the dead, then all of a sudden, there's a dearth in the land. There's a famine. And she basically they lose everything they own. Who knew that? They lose everything they own. How did they get it back? Now, they took care of the man of God, didn't they? They said, let's build on. Let's make a prophet's chambers, and he can come and he can refresh himself, and he can get strength. He can sleep and rest. And then everything is gone. How do they get it back? Does God forget? God is not unrighteous to forget your work and labor. God will take care of you. God remembers. Okay, let's see the end of this story. Let's go to 2 Kings. 2 Kings. 2 Kings chapter 8. There's a real bad dearth, famine for 7 years came upon the land. 2 Kings chapter 8. We often forget, and I have to admit, I never saw this till I read later on. I was reading through my Bible and I read from 2 Kings 4 and I got through chapter 8, and all of a sudden it dawned on me that in chapter 8, this is the same woman that's in chapter 4. So it says in chapter 8, verse 1, then spake Elisha unto the woman whose son he had restored to life. Same person? It is. Saying, arise and go thou and thine household and sojourn wheresoever thou canst sojourn. For the Lord hath called for a famine, and it shall also come upon the land 7 years. So she gets a warning from Elisha. There's a famine coming for 7 years. You better get out of here and get into a place where at least you can get food. And the woman arose and did after the saying of the man of God, and she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. Now, again, most of the time in the Bible, the man of God would talk to who? He'd talk to the husband, wouldn't he? And he'd say to the husband, hey, you better get out of here. 7 years, take your family. But instead, he goes to the woman and he talks to her. And the woman arose and did after the saying of the man of God. In verse number 3, and it came to pass at the 7 years' end that the woman returned out of the land of the Philistines. And she went forth to cry unto the king for her house and for her land. So what happened? She lost everything. They lost everything, their house and their land. Now watch this. Watch God's timing. Aren't you glad God's still on the throne? Okay. Does God ever do the things that are such incredible timing for you? That you say, the timing of this. I mean, this all happened and it couldn't happen any differently. It's like the Lord just set this up, boom, 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 all the way from start to finish. Ever happened to you? That you say, this is God. Why? How did God know all this? Watch the timing of this. 7 years. They've been living in the land of the Philistines. They come back, and obviously their house is occupied by somebody else, or it's desolate, or whatever. Said, our house, our land. So she goes in and cries before the king. Does the king know her? No, he doesn't know her, but he's about to. He's about to. Watch this. It says in verse number 4, and the king talked with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, tell me, I pray thee, all the great things that Elisha hath done. Now, isn't that weird? Gehazi's talking to the king, and the king says, hey, by the way, I want to know some of these great things that Elisha has done. I heard he's an amazing prophet. Tell me, Gehazi, what are some of the great things that Elisha has done? Now, what do you think Gehazi tells him? Watch. And it came to pass, as he was telling the king, how he had what? Restored a dead body to life. Whose body? That's the woman's son. That behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king. So while he's telling the king the story, the woman comes in and, oh, king, and cries to the king. Now watch. Behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life cried to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, my lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. So the king appointed unto her a certain officer, saying, restore all that was hers, and all the fruits of the field, since the day that she left the land, even until now. 7 years later, she comes in. Gehazi's telling the king, you should have seen it, king. Elisha, he got down on this child. And as he's telling the story, the woman comes in and cries, and he goes, hey, that's her. And that's the boy. Come here. And they come over, and the king says, what's your need? And she said, the famine has taken all that we owned. I'm here to cry before you to restore my land and restore the house to us. And the king said, take the servant, my servant, go with him and make sure everything is restored. God was there with that person from the beginning to the end. You can't go wrong serving the Lord. This is the story of the godly couple and the righteous planners who put the things of the Lord first. And because they put the things of the Lord first, and they didn't expect anything. Remember, she said, I dwell amongst my own people. I don't expect anything. She did it all willingly. And in the end, God saw her attitude and saw her heart and gave her everything back, including the life of her son. Okay, that's the righteous planners and the godly couple. We'll take a break.